afternoon. Welcome and thanks for listening to Relational Practice, a social work podcast. I'm Dr. Jodie Park.
And I'm Rose Mackey, and we are both private practice social workers who work in child protection, out-of-home care and trauma. Today we are recording on Darrell Land, New South Wales, Australia.
Thank you for joining us. And just a reminder, can you please subscribe to our podcast, honestly, wherever you can. We have a Facebook presence. We have an Instagram presence, obviously, wherever you listened to this podcast. Please follow us, subscribe, and remember to email us any comments that you might have, any practice stories, anything you would like us to know, any topics you'd like us to cover. We're happy to receive an email about pretty much anything. You can get us on relational practice, or one word, 01 @gmail.com.
I do wonder if you're ever going to regret saying that.
I mean, I hope so. Don't you think?
Well, let's see.
Because that means, we've had some really cool emails so far, haven't we?
We actually have. We've had nothing negative. We've had some great critical feedback, which has been really helpful for us.
Yeah.
And some really positive feedback, but we've had nothing negative so far.
I know, but every time I check it, I'm like, is today the day? Someone's going to go, your pair sucks so much and you have no idea what you're saying. Imagine if I'd be fine with that. I've been called worse.
I'm sure we both have, but yeah, I'm not sure I'd be cool with it.
Yeah, you would, because people have to just be them, don't they? You do you.
Yes.
But we did want to mention some feedback we did get. One of the emails we got in between now and when we last recorded 2 weeks ago was from a listener who talked about their experience of the mental load of decision making. And it was such a good email, wasn't it?
It actually made me reflect on what it was like. This person is in a managerial position in a child protection organisation, is what it seemed like.
Mm-hmm.
And the amount of decisions she was making per day and then in a week is, I guess, that mental load she was talking about. But it made me stop and think, wow, actually she's right. How many decisions do you, as a social worker, a practitioner, whatever your role is, how many decisions do you make in a day?
Particularly when you manage a team.
Oh, it's even more when you're managing a team.
Well, because you're making decisions for not just you, but for your team then as well. It's crazy. And we kind of felt so connected, didn't we, with her story and the information that she put in her email, and just really, really appreciated the feedback. So thank you very much, listener. You will know who you are.
Yes.
All right, let's get on with today's stuff, shall we?
Parenting capacity.
Yes. Now, I just need to say we are very unscripted, as I'm sure you've worked out, but we do have some notes. But I also forgot my glasses today, so I'm trying to also squint and read at the same time, so it's such a good look. Anyway, that's a bit of a sideline issue, but let's get on with today's stuff. So today we're going to explore parenting capacity, in a bit of a different way, I guess. So we want you to think about our conversation today is allowing the foundation for understanding parenting capacity from a kind of different perspective than what you might think.
We're going to do a few episodes on parenting capacity.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're aiming to do is, regardless of your current role, if you're working with families, we want to talk about parenting capacity in a way that's going to be general enough that it's going to meet everyone's needs or everyone can get something out of it.
Yeah.
But we're going to do a few episodes on it because it's really large, but also we're going to break down formal parenting capacity assessments, informal parenting capacity observations, and how to utilize it in practice.
Yeah. Cool. That was enough topic. That was perfect. Okay. Perfectly on topic. Because we don't want this just to be for those social workers who work in child protection, out of home care. We want this topic to be applicable for everybody, really. And, everyone has a family. Whether you still are part of your family or not, everyone that you work with has some kind of family that they came from or may still be very connected to.
Absolutely.
So this information can be relevant to pretty much everyone. It's just about adapting what we say and applying and working out how to apply it in your field.
Absolutely.
Okay. we are going to be, I think you covered all that, Rose. What we're really going to talk about. We will probably refer to different theories, maybe, as we aimed to. Let's hope that we put them in there. But I mean, some of the theories that are really applicable for the conversation today is obviously theories around trauma, but also child development, family systems theory, ecological theory, and human development theories.
So those lifespan development theories. So we're thinking about temperament, personality, socialization, psychological development theory. All of those theories that we all know a little or a lot about.
Yeah.
And probably utilize much more than what we're consciously aware of at times, I think.
Yeah, I agree. We are going to do a whole session on socialization, we decided, didn't we?
We did.
And temperament. Because it's something that is so important. Understanding how a person's socialization experiences impacts on the rest of their life is really important. And I don't think it's something that's talked about enough or a lot or at all. Or
yes, we're going to have a really good episode, I think, on socialization and temperament and goodness of fit, because that all fits into this parenting capacity couple of episodes we're going to do.
Yeah, but also fits really nicely into the attachment stuff.
Yes.
That we talked about a few episodes ago. All right, let's start with the definition of parenting capacity. What is it that we are talking about? So I'm going to read this definition out. So parenting capacity, it refers to the ability of a parent or caregiver to adequately and appropriately meet the developmental needs of their child and to adapt to those changing needs over time. It includes a range of skills, knowledge, and personal attributes that enables a parent to provide a safe, nurturing, and supportive environment for their child's well-being and development. Essentially, it's about whether a parent can provide good enough parenting consistently and in the long term. It doesn't mean perfect parenting, but rather a level of care that ensures the child's safety, health, emotional security, and opportunities for growth. And I read that out because I didn't want to miss anything. Because that's every element that I just spoke about, that I just talked about in that definition, is parenting capacity. So it's not just one thing, and it's not just actions, it's also the psychological intent of the action.
And I think that's the part that hopefully we can highlight when we say we want to talk about this differently. Mm-hmm. That's the part we really want to highlight, that psychological intent and the attunement and the capacity of parents to consider when they actually haven't been at their best parenting and what that has looked like for their child or children and what they can do in the future in relation to that, as opposed to denying, minimizing, blaming or justifying and continuing on a pattern of behaviors.
Yeah, because it really is important that as a parent that you actually know what your strengths are and what your deficits are, and that you actually acknowledge them.
Absolutely.
Because it kind of goes back to that notion that there is no perfect parent. There's no perfect parent. Every parent makes mistakes. And every parent can look back and wish that they may have done, something differently or everything differently. But I guess that ability to look back and reflect on your own parenting actions is the difference between you having some really strong empathy and insight for your child's experience or about your child's experience versus just being very focused on you.
And I think when you are working with parents that are very focused on themselves, what I've found in my experience is it's then very hard to see any behavioural changes that can be consistently demonstrated then in their parenting, because the focus somehow always reverts to them and they're whilst they might be expressing a desire and a willingness to change, I guess that's when we're thinking in parenting capacity about the actual ability. Are they able? What does their capacity to change actually look like and mean in the parenting world?
Yeah, and the motivation for that change.
And the motivation.
And it always comes down to, as you said, Rose, doesn't it always comes down to motivation, capacity, and willingness?
Yes. When I was first employed in a child protection role. One of the things that has never left me, at all in my practice is the person that was training the group of us new recruits said, always, every day, I think he'd said about 15 times, are they willing? Are they able? What does their motivation look like? If you forget everything in this course, you need to remember, are they willing? Are they able? Where is their motivation, or what is their motivation? Like, he drummed that in, and I have kept that throughout my whole career in various roles.
Yeah, because that motivation really links to that, to the ability to actually enact the change cycle. And if you need to change something, I mean, know how hard it is to change anything. Or, think about if you've had to give up sugar, or you've had to give up smoking, or you wanted to give up drinking, or, something. It's really hard to maintain the motivation for that change. And having to change some element of your parenting is exactly the same. You're still kind of going through that change cycle. So you have to be able to maintain the motivation, but also the motivation has to be something that is kind of internal. It can't be external.
Yes.
Because it can't be sustained if it's external. An external validation, such as if you don't do this, your children are going to be removed, can maybe kickstart that change cycle. But it
won't maintain it.
It won't maintain it. It definitely won't maintain it, because what happens when services stop looking? And if you haven't actually enacted a change in your parenting, or because you don't think you have to, and you're just doing it because somebody told you needed to, then as soon as someone stops looking, you're just going to stop.
So as practitioners, I guess what we're saying is, from that lens, what do the conversations look like with the parents you're working with, and how are you testing, observing, assessing? Is this a ticker box change and because someone's looking, or is this demonstrated change that's going to be demonstrated over a period of time?
Yeah.
And we will talk about it, but as a practitioner, I've also found it very helpful sometimes to have the conversation with parents around, you have the ability.
Yeah.
But what I'm not seeing is a willingness. So how do we target an intervention to help your willingness?
Yeah.
Or you are really willing as a parent,
yeah,
but the ability is not there. So how are we going to look at that?
Yeah.
And those are the types of things as practitioners, or as a practitioner, that have helped me in my work.
Yeah. And what I liked about what you just said, Rory, is it's about having those tough conversations, isn't it? And it's actually about addressing and identifying deficits as well as strengths. Not having and not hiding those deficits or attributing them to, something else, actually naming them as something that needs to change.
Well, if it's not named,
yeah,
then in my opinion, you're just wasting your time, because as you're working with clients, they need to know exactly, like, what is your assessment of them? And sometimes those hard conversations or necessary conversations, absolutely uncomfortable, absolutely might need a couple of weeks and a few more conversations for your client to actually be in a space where they can hear it, receive it, have a conversation. And sometimes the people we work with are never going to be in that space, or won't be in the space for the capacity you have to work with them.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean we shy away from those conversations, because without using, and we spoke about professional judgment and decision making and risk, if you take the risk not to fully inform a parent about the outcome of your assessments, including the deficits, then you are actually doing harm, in my opinion. Change won't occur, and the trajectory of that family's life and that parent's life are just going to be completely impacted in a negative manner.
Can I ask a conversation, and we can probably edit this out at a later date if we feel like it might not be a good conversation, but I'm going to say this conversation. Do you think that the current child protection out of home care practice scenario in New South Wales, Australia, do you think that there is currently a bit of an unspoken expectation not to focus on deficits for parents and to really talk up strengths?
I think there are, in New South Wales, it's a large geographical area. I think there are pockets where that is absolutely what's occurring in practice right now. I think there are pockets where practitioners aren't clear on how to assess parenting capacity, how to have the conversations, and how to even sit comfortably in the fact that they might be working in a large multidisciplinary team and they have a very different view to the others.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That doesn't mean it needs to be adversarial.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that your views aren't valid. It doesn't mean that you're wrong or that you're right. It just means that the conversation needs to be had. And I also think about the training that I have seen new recruits into the child protection system in New South Wales over the last 5 years, but certainly not in the last 6 months that I've been out of it. I don't know that the training actually addresses parenting capacity, the informal observations, the formal assessments, and then the conversation with parents, because we're very focused on the practice framework, on strengths, and all those things need to be part of practice. But as child protection practitioners, if you think about the core role, and I think any role in practice, if you're working with families, if you're not addressing parenting capacity, how is change going to occur? And I'm talking about real change.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's not, is it? Because I guess if you look at the literature around how do you actually motivate parents for change, then one of the things that it says, that the literature says, is that you actually have to address those outside influences on what is actually impacting the parenting capacity in any given time. So whether that be drug and alcohol, whether that be mental health, whether that be poverty, whether that be domestic violence, whatever is occurring, you actually need to address those issues at the same time as addressing the parenting capacity concern.
And I think if you think back to the previous conversations we've had about the neoliberal state that we're currently in, about the cost of child protection and out-of-home care across the world, if you think about addressing really huge domains like domestic violence and drug and alcohol and mental health in one household, think about the time and investment that is actually going to take to do really thorough work to then start working on parenting capacity and enhancing that. And what we're talking about is good enough. We're not talking about perfect. We're talking about good enough parenting. How much time does an agency have, and where are the funds coming? And I wonder if that, again, is part of the systemic problems that I'm seeing in the child protection space.
Yeah, and I guess the big question is the child safe whilst the parent is addressing those concerns? And what happens if they're not?
Yeah, what does happen if they're not? We have, and it's certainly a widespread issue where we are, a real lack of placement options for children, lack of foster carers, the number of placements children unfortunately cycle in and out of. It's a real dilemma, and it's great to sit here and theoretically discuss it and pull out, the themes of that. But as practitioners who are in the field, and it's probably many of you listening, like that is again a mental load that practitioners are carrying. And then if you're unsure how to assess parenting capacity, have a conversation about parenting capacity. If you're unsure how to target an intervention or coordinate services around parenting capacity, then what does that end result look like?
Well, I think it just turns into a cycle, doesn't it? Because the longer a child is exposed to, traumatic parenting, let's call it that, parenting that causes a trauma response in that child, then the more that household, that family system, let's talk about family system, is going to be compromised, because that child's going to become harder to parent.
Much harder to parent. And we talked just briefly earlier about socialization. Add that layer in. What does then that socialization look for that child or children? What is the impact then on personality, on how they show up? And I'm talking about how they show up every day in life. And then you can start to see the links then to poor outcomes in education, poor outcomes in health, social aspects, like, why children are spending so much time online or isolated, not engaged in, activities with peers of their own age. You can see how it's all connected.
It's so connected, which is why this topic actually can reach a wider audience than just people who work in child protection out of home care space, because it's all so connected. And we're certainly not advocating that children should not be in a home where there might be parenting concerns. What we are advocating for, though, is the ability for practitioners to just feel comfortable and confident to have honest conversations with parents about what needs to change and how that needs to change, and what their strengths are, and if outside concerns or outside services are required, what that needs to look like.
Yes, because if you're clear and the parents are clear, then your referral to an outside service is going to be much clearer.
Yeah.
There's going to be a defined scope of work.
Yeah.
And there's going to be an easier way to look at the outcomes based on the referral purpose. And everyone's on the same page with, if you think about transparency and trust building, we talked about trust with supervisors, and we've spoken a lot about parallel practice. It's the same. Our clients need to know that we are being transparent with them.
Do you know what? You just reminded me of a story. I remember this, and it's such a sad story. So I remember working with this mum who had really significant mental health concerns. Like, she was quite unwell a lot of the time, but not all of the time. Some of the time she was okay, but she was really quite non-compliant with medication and with support services. So she had a baby, and she loved that baby so much, really loved that baby, but just could not look after that baby. And so, I made lots of attempts to kind of to refer her to in-house residential programs so she could take the baby and she could kind of, learn how to parent and hopefully get some mental health support while she was there. There was this one particular program that used to take women with babies who had mental health support in New South Wales. I'm not sure if it's still open now, that program. Anyway, it was amazing, and it was like a 9-month program or something. So she went there. She really struggled through that program, but completed the program. So there was lots of kind of, there was lots of good feeling that she was going to be okay. But the minute she got back into the community and she didn't have that 24-hour support, she just couldn't do it. And I remember having lots and lots of conversations with her that were really honest and really raw about, I know that you are so motivated to care for this child, and I know how much you love this child, but we know, I'm saying we, but I should say it does not seem like you can do it.
So that sounds to me like she was motivated and she was willing, but she was unable. She did not have the capacity. And
she didn't have the capacity to learn how to actually parent in a predictable, attuned, empathetic way that was also adaptable.
Yes, and the adaptability has to come because babies grow into toddlers, grow into primary school age children, middle childhood, and that's the evolution. Whilst you need to be consistent in parenting, your child or children are growing and going through different stages of the lifespan, and they require different parenting for different stages.
Yeah, so you need to have adaptable, flexible parenting. So this lady, and I remember this example all the time because I think it was because I had such honest conversations with her and spent so much time with her that she came to the conclusion herself. She said, I know that I can't do it, and I know that I won't be able to look after him. I just know that I won't be able to do that. So she helped find, we had some foster care options. She met the carers, proposed carers, actually developed a really lovely relationship with the long-term carer. He went into long-term care, and last I heard, the foster carer mum was still really quite enmeshed, and it was kind of like this co-parenting arrangement.
Yeah.
Which was such a lovely story.
So lovely.
And I honestly think, I think I've made lots and lots of practice mistakes, but I actually think in this situation, for whatever reason, I actually did pretty well because she was a part of that story, and I'm sure will still be part of that child's life, and he's probably a teenager now. Yeah.
Was she a young mum?
No.
And so when you were talking, and I asked because I often think about when I've worked with particularly young teenagers that have had a very traumatic upbringing and been in, I guess, the care and protection system themselves, that I worked with some really young mums that have become pregnant and sometimes on 2 occasions found foster carers for the young mum. She was pregnant. They were pregnant at the time.
Yeah.
And then with the view that when the mother, they gave birth, that the baby would also be part of the foster family. And in one case, it actually worked out really well. And in another case, I just think where that young mum was in the change cycle and her motivation wasn't there, so she wasn't able. She would have been, I would say, able to parent, but she wasn't willing at that point in time. But the baby remained in that foster placement and she exited.
Yeah.
But yours wasn't a young mum, so that's...
Yeah, she wasn't a young mum. She wasn't a young mum.
It's a sad story, but it's a nice story as well.
It is a nice story, but it is a sad. I mean, she tried her best.
Yeah.
She tried her best, that mum. And circumstances outside of her control. She had this mental health diagnosis that she was never really going to be able to overcome. It's a lifelong thing.
Well, on that sad note, shall we talk about parenting domains?
Yeah, let's talk about these. So there's when I was setting up my private practice and I was writing all my templates for, lots of assessments I was going to do, when it came to writing a template for the parenting capacity assessments, I really wanted to have a template that had a really strong link to theory and had a really strong link to literature, but also a template that was really self-explanatory in terms of my theoretical kind of position, how I was conducting this parenting capacity assessment. So I wanted the template to explain that. So the way that I did that was by being really clear around the domains of parenting that I had kind of I'm thinking of a word, cobbled together.
Cobbled,
that's a good word, isn't it? Cobbled together from reading lots of literature around what people have said parenting capacity is. Okay. So I'm just thinking as I'm saying this, I'm sure, no, if it was a cut and paste, I would have had a quote. So no, I think I did synthesize this material and put it together. I remember at the time reading millions of it.
What's with the big words today? Cobbled, since that I can't even say it.
I don't know. And given I don't have my glasses, I mean, like, and I can hardly see. It's crazy. Anyway, let's get on. So there's certain things, the literature, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Oh no, 5, sorry.
Yeah. 5 specific parenting domains that the literature says kind of underpin an assessment of parenting capacity. So we're going to go through them. So the first one is that the parents, and we've talked about these already actually, is that the parents' understanding and insight about the child protection concerns. So they need to have an understanding and insight about what happened. That's what that means. I said it really badly, but that's what that means. Yeah. And if you're working with a parent who doesn't have any understanding around what the concerns and the deficits are, then automatically you need to be having a little bit of a red flag about, I guess, about their attunement, parental attunement and empathy for the experience of their child.
What would you say if I said there are child protection concerns in a household, but no one in a statutory or otherwise role has explained what the concerns are to the parents previously, and the manner in which they were parented themselves was quite poor and abusive, and the way in which they had been socialized meant that their expectation of the world and what parenting looked like was how they were parenting. What would you say about how you would tease that out, as opposed to they have no understanding or insight into the child protection concerns?
So this kind of goes into one of the other domains, which is around the capacity for the parents for empathy, attunement, and attachment with their children. So the way that I would tease that out, and the way that I have teased it out, is to actually ask the parents about their experience of being parented, what that felt like for them, and then I guess, how they feel their children have had the felt experience of their children, how they've experienced their parenting. So you're asking the parents about their own history of parenting, and then you're asking them, okay, now I want you to think about how your children's experience of your parenting. Trying to get to a point to see whether this parent can identify that, say, I myself didn't have a good experience of parenting, and now I realize that I've just continued that cycle. Or I myself didn't have a good experience of parenting. I didn't really have the words to explain that at the time, but I know it didn't feel okay, and I've tried to do it differently. Does that answer your question? Not really. I can tell by your face.
No, well, it answers part of it. I guess I wonder, you've not had that conversation yet, and you're walking in to meet some parents, but no worker has ever explained to them what their concerns are.
So if I'm meeting these parents though, and just say, if I'm meeting these parents and I'm pulling out these domains, then I'm doing a parenting capacity assessment in some, either a formal or an informal one. Yeah. So I'm actually having this conversation with the parents. I'm going to take them back to their own experience of parenting, because I want to know whether they have empathy, insight firstly about what happened to them, and then empathy about what that then means for their child now, in terms of how that previous parenting example has influenced their own parenting moving forward.
So what you're saying is, you yourself as a practitioner, regardless of what any professional work, regardless of what those conversations have looked like, you can tease that out yourself.
You can definitely tease that out. Definitely. And you should be teasing that out. And if you take someone back to their own experience of being parented, it's actually an easy way. I say easy loosely, but it's a nice way. Let's say nice way, gentle way, different words, but it's a way of getting someone to reflect on how they were parented in a way that is not an attack. They don't have to be defensive. Yeah, you just need to be able to explain the rationale, because, some people can be like, why do you want to know about my childhood? How's that relevant? We're not here talking about me, blah, blah, blah. So you just need to explain the rationale as to why you're asking the questions you're asking. And the reason you're asking the questions is because you want to actually understand their full context. You want to understand them, where they came from, because we are so influenced by the parenting we receive.
Yes. So I guess I'm asking those questions because I'm trying to tease out for us practitioners, regardless of the work of previous practitioners, or even the context. If you think about the families you've worked with where maybe they parented a child or two right up until their 20s, and then much later had another child, and Child Protection Services come in and they were like, but I've parented two children, and now you're here and I'm doing, regardless of all that, as a practitioner with the right skills and knowledge, we can tease that out.
Yes.
I don't believe it doesn't matter what's gone on before us. As a practitioner, I do think we can tease out that capacity, the ability, the willingness, and the motivation, regardless of the practitioner's work before us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or the context, if they've raised children in, 10 years ago.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's absolutely we can, and we should be. Because we should always be basing our own assessment on the information that we receive. Of course, you're going to be looking at information that might already exist about this person. Of course, that's going to factor into your assessment. But it shouldn't be the only thing that factors into your assessment, because that's actually not being fair. And it's not being inclusive of the current context this person finds themselves in. Yeah. And most people want to talk about their children. So if you get them to talk about their childhood, you've had that conversation, getting them to talk about their own children is pretty easy. Most people want to do that. And then you can hear how they describe their children. What do they say about them? Because that's the way you're going to know, or you're going to form some hypotheses about their capacity for parental attunement and parental empathy.
Yeah.
And you need to have attunement because that kind of goes to that adaptability stuff. Yeah. And you need to, you can't meet a child's needs unless you know what they are. And attunement means that you can actually predict the needs before they arise.
Yes. You're anticipating.
That's right.
These needs are coming.
That's right. This baby needs feeding. I can get the bottle ready ahead of time to feed the baby. That's why the baby is crying. Yep. My toddler, when they wake up from a sleep, they're going to be cranky because that's what happens when they wake up. I can have a toy ready or something ready to kind of to help that. It's about preempting needs.
Yes.
A demonstration of parental change in understanding and behaviour relating to the child protection concern. So really what that means is that is there evidence that this parent has actually been able to change their behaviour in the past? And what does that look like? And it doesn't matter if there's a relapse. We're not saying, just say this person may have a really long-standing drug and alcohol history, but they were maybe clean for 2 years and then there's been a relapse. We're not saying that's it, you can never parent again because you've relapsed, because relapse is part of a change cycle. But what that does say is that they have actually been able to manage drug use effectively in the past. So how do they do that and how can we help that to happen again? Yeah.
And how do we plan around relapse or lapse?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. A demonstration and or capacity of the parents to engage with support services now and in the future. So what is that going to look like? Are they actually happy to engage with support services, or do you get the sense that they're only saying, yes, I'll work with anyone just so that people go away? Yeah. And the demonstration of the parents to understand the individual needs of the children, which we've already talked about.
So I just wanted to go back briefly to the demonstration or capacity to engage with support services now and in the future.
Yeah.
This is where, as practitioners, and I'm including myself in this, closure reports or handing a family back to the service that referred you, or handing a family on to another service. I think we have capacity as practitioners to really enhance how we consider the family's engagement, and we can give a very fair handover. So not just the strengths, not just what was really well done because you're ending and you want to end on a nice note. I've seen that happen. But a really fair and accurate description about what it was like to work with this family. So if someone is doing a parenting capacity assessment about their capacity to engage with support services, it's actually well thought through and a little bit more accurate than some of the ones I've seen in the past couple of years.
Well, and I think if you are considering theory and how theory would underpin your kind of considerations around engagement with support services, we need to be considering that if you're working with a family that has experienced trauma, or where there's been domestic violence, or there's been something that has impacted on their trust of services, then it's going to take a lot longer for engagement to actually happen. And then you need to be thinking about, what does that engagement actually look like?
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So I know we got off track in the middle of that conversation, but I guess those 5 parenting domains are really kind of fundamental when you're thinking about parenting capacity, and they should underpin the information you want to gather, whether formally or informally. You're going to be gathering information because every time you talk to a client, you're gathering information. Yeah. And if one of the things that you're thinking about is around the parenting capacity, the willingness, the motivation, the understanding, all of that, then you have to be thinking about those parenting domains and how they feature.
Thank you for sharing those 5 domains, because it was based on all of your readings of the literature, your understanding of theories as well. I'm sure there's, like in this, you can see how the theory has also impacted on what we've brought and just saved everyone hours and hours and hours and hours of work and reading.
Well, hopefully. Imagine if someone says, you know what, I think you're wrong, Jodie. I'd be like, well, probably. No, I wouldn't say probably.
Like, great, let's Let's
have a
extend on it.
conversation.
Let's figure it out, because that's how we learn, right?
That's true.
So another conversation we had when we were planning for this episode was about, is parenting capacity subjective or objective?
God, didn't we have a good conversation about that, Rose?
I got myself all tangled up.
Well, I think we both did. I don't think it was just you. And then we had to actually, we had
to do some research.
We had to Google the definitions for subjective and objective, because we were like, hang on
a minute, it is. And then we were like, no, it's not subjective, it is objective. Well, the conclusion we came to was that it's a bit of a mix. It's subjective and objective. Because if you think about what is objective, it's those, facts and evidence. It's consistent across all individuals. And this is where we can't say it's purely objective, because I could assess parenting capacity using the 5 domains we've talked about.
Yeah.
And another practitioner could also assess parenting capacity with the same domains, and we could come up with very different assessment outcomes.
Absolutely. And you would hope you would come up with a different assessment analysis.
Oh, well, that's a given.
Yeah.
But the recommendations, or the real hook at the end, what is this person's parenting capacity? I would think that there is very little chance that we'd ever be completely consistent as practitioners in that.
Do you reckon?
Yeah. Well, you'd hope not. You'd hope your analysis was different.
Yeah.
And your recommendations.
You could have different recommendations.
The general kind of outcome, one would hope, would be the same. But we've seen many times where it hasn't.
We have. Yeah, we have. Yeah. Yeah, we have. Absolutely. Because I guess we all bring our own stuff, don't we? That's why it is subjective and objective, because the objective part of assessing parenting capacity is, how you, I feel like I'm just repeating everything.
We aim to be very non-biased.
Yeah.
But I think we are absolutely influenced by our personal bias. And our lived experiences as parents, as humans, as social workers, as whatever it is going to impact. And I guess the other thing I stopped myself saying before was the theories that I really love and understand, they underpin my work. But other practitioners may have equally a very different theoretical background. They may be, more behaviouralist parenting than I am. So those differences are going to come out in parenting capacity.
And that's true. And they should come out.
Yes.
But the end recommendation, you would hope would be similar.
But I've seen many times where, as a child protection agency, you get a parenting capacity report back, you don't like the outcome, and you go and find someone else to assess, and they give you what you want. That happens. It does happen.
Goodness gracious. They were the days when people had money to be able to
continue getting assessments done.
To pay for different assessments.
And then you'd put the 2 experts on the stand and let the magistrate decide.
Oh, my goodness. That sounds like a bit of a waste of time and money for...
Well, these are the lessons we learn, aren't they?
At
the time, I'm sure there's been very good reasons for those occurrences.
That's true.
So we've decided parenting capacity, subjective and subjective.
Yes.
It's a mix.
It's very much a mix, because you have to be able to make sense of the subjective information that you've gathered. And that's when it becomes objective, because you're applying this sense making.
So I think we talked earlier about why is parenting capacity important for practitioners across all different fields.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I framed this before when Jodie and I were talking about, well, why do we care? Why do we care about parenting capacity?
Why do we care?
And so Jodie mentioned earlier, we all come from a family context. And we've talked about socialization. We've talked about goodness of fit, and how it is to grow and develop as a child. You go through the lifespan, the ages and stages. Your parenting influences how you progress through your lifespan development.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely.
When you think about parenting capacity, and I guess it's profound and long-lasting impact that it has on the well-being and development of children. What we have talked about in preparing for this was that part of parenting capacity and knowing what it is a way to provide safety and protection to children.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty self-explanatory, but it also needs to look at their physical health and their emotional health. So if you're thinking about safeguarding children's, children from abuse and neglect, you need to think about their physical and their emotional well-being. Parenting capacity and a good enough parenting capacity should promote healthy child development. So that's another reason why we care about it, because we want healthy children.
Yeah, and I like that you said good enough parenting capacity, because it just has to be good enough.
It does. We're not striving for perfection, because that does not exist in any parent.
No.
We also care about it because it is parenting capacity, and the way you're parented can safeguard children against negative outcomes throughout their whole lifespan. So you think about mental health issues, behavioural problems, relationship difficulties. Think about, we've just had a federal election in Australia, and you think about the policies that were talked about in that election. All those policies, and I'm talking about the big ones that us social workers probably care about. I'm not talking about finances or, imports and exports. I'm sure we should care about them. But if you think about Australia's position on domestic violence, there is so much more that needs to be done, and we all need to get better. I think all the politicians need to get better at addressing policies about women's safety. But if you think about that issue in the parenting context, that's why it's so important. We all start as babies in families, and the impact traumatic parenting can have on an individual and the long-lasting impacts it can then have on them and the people they encounter in their life and society can be disastrous.
Well, it can be. And I'm just going to say this very quickly about the election. We in Australia, I think, had a really good save, really, from I don't know how much we should get into this, but I have to say it, from being led from a possible government where systemic racism was just part of the go. Do we have enough racism in our country? We do not need our politicians and our leading political party to kind of push systemic racism and think that it's okay.
Okay. Yeah.
So we had a lucky save.
We did. It was lucky. So if you think about all of the issues that are really big when it comes to election cycle, or that should be, whether they are or not, such as homelessness, poverty, domestic violence, drug and alcohol misuse and abuse, and there's a million other domains I haven't mentioned, there is an aspect of good enough parenting or parenting capacity or working with services with parents that forms this work. It's all encompassing. So I guess one of the major points I want to make about parenting capacity is about our investment in the long-term societal costs. The positive impacts will come if we invest in parenting.
Yes.
If we continue to just look at strengths and not look at deficits in the child protection arena, if we continue to not invest money and services into parenting and helping parents along their parenting journey, the long-term impacts of us as a society, now I'm stumbling over my words, I'm on my soapbox, is going to continue in the negative fashion that we are in now. We're in a pickle.
Yeah.
We're in such a pickle if you look at how many women are being murdered every couple of days, at least in Australia. If you look at the rates of domestic violence, if you look at the drug and alcohol misuse sector, if you look at cultural and systemic racism issues, especially in Australia, because that's the context we are in, we don't invest in parenting and as practitioners really understanding parenting capacity, how we assess it, what it is when we observe, some, poor examples of parenting, and we're not addressing it then with our clients, we're going to continue on the trajectory that we are. And right now it's a pretty downhill trajectory.
Yeah. Well, because I think let's take this back to kind of practice, I think part of the pickle we're currently in is the fact that I don't think workers are being taught how to actually assess the parenting capacity. They're just not taught that anymore. And I think, and this, I don't want to go into this conversation because we've already gone for a long time and we're still doing the practice thing. But I think when you think about the introduction of structured decision-making tools, restoration tool, that is probably the tool that assesses parenting capacity. Yeah, what that actually looks like and what that actually considers. It's really scary to think that is the tool where people can make decisions about parenting capacity based on that tool.
Yes.
All right.
So I would just say that to understand and support parents in their role, if we do that well, we're contributing to healthier individuals, stronger families, and then a more thriving society.
True.
All right. So we talked earlier that we're going to do a few episodes on parenting capacity. But in this episode, I guess I wanted to share a story about a family that I was asked to work with in my private social work role to aid in restoration. So it was a single mother who had 4 children, 2 boys, 2 girls, and she had had a parenting capacity assessment done through the court service, and as a decision had been made that restoration was realistic and the case plan goal. So her children's ages ranged from toddler to adolescence, and across the 4 children that she had, they all had quite individual and different needs.
Yeah.
So I was asked to do restoration support work with this mother, and at the time she had none of her children in her care.
Can I ask you a question? When you read that parenting capacity assessment, could you clearly identify something that looked like domains of parenting?
I could definitely identify how she had worked with services in the past.
Yep.
That definitely was a domain that was talked about a lot, and it was a very strong, strengths-based.
Right.
I think you mentioned earlier, it's not about just working with every service. This mother had worked, you named it, she'd done every parenting course available in the local area.
Yeah.
She'd done every online parenting course that had been offered in the last 12 months, and she had said she was willing to work with any other service that she was referred to.
Right. Okay.
Including myself.
Yeah.
That domain, the other domains, look, there was comments and analysis about her insight and understanding of the child protection concerns. The other 3 domains couldn't pull out from that.
Okay. That's kind of interesting, isn't it?
It was very interesting. And this parenting capacity assessment was, it was very strengths-based, and it was, very much focused on the challenges that this mother had faced in her life.
Did it focus on the children's experience?
It did, but not to the extent that I guess I was expecting.
Right.
Given their ages and their experiences.
Yeah.
And what I had been given in my referral to then, if I'd just been given that parenting capacity assessment,
Yeah, right.
I would have had lots of deficits in the information that I held.
This is your practice example, and I know I should stop talking, but I guess one of the things you want to do is you want to match capacity to child's needs, don't you? And part of their needs is how their experience of being parented by this person has impacted on their psychosocial functioning and well-being. Yeah.
And I think it's weird that you raise that, because I remember during one of our sessions that this mother actually said, I'm much better at parenting babies than I am adolescents, and 2 of her children were in adolescence.
Right.
She continued to say, I struggle parenting adolescents. I can do it, but it's not my preference. Well, you're a parent and we have to parent across all ages and stages.
Yeah.
But she had a definite preference for parenting a baby. And I made a few hypotheses about that and the reasons why.
Okay.
So anyway, I started working with this mum, and she was very willing to engage, as the assessment said, very willing to work with services. She actually taught me a lot about the service provisions in our area and gave me some really good referral options for other clients. She was really, really happy to take services into her home. So I guess, as I said, she didn't have the children in her care when we first started working together. So the first few sessions, as well as building rapport and defining what our work would look like, I focused on just some interview questions with her about her parenting. She was seeing her children very regularly because restoration was imminent. So I asked lots of different questions about her parenting currently and what it looked like, and asked for examples. And then when she would give me an example, I would say, well, when was the last time you did that? And so when was the time before that? Just, sometimes when you're working with clients, they can tell you what seems to be a really nice story that demonstrates capacity, but I have learnt to always dig deeper. So when was the time before that you did this?
Yeah.
And is there another time that you can recall? Because if they can't and it's just a one-off, then I think you need to make some hypothesis around that. And we all know that when anyone's been assessed, whether it's formally or informally, they can fake good or they can crumble under pressure.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
So I asked her lots of questions about parenting, what she was like as a parent pre her children being removed, and then what she feels she's like as a parent post removal, and working towards restoration. And as we talked about earlier, what did it look like for her children? So I did struggle trying to understand what her parenting looked like before her children were removed, because the parenting capacity assessment told me that she had insight into the reasons why her children were removed. What I found through my interviewing, the questions I was asking the first initial sessions, was that I couldn't clearly say that. I could not say that she demonstrated insight and understanding into the reasons why her children had been removed. She absolutely could tell me about the role of their father, the role of her ex-partner. She could tell me about the role of a grandparent, but she could not, in her narrative, tell me where her role was in the removal. And the children were in her full-time care when they were removed. But she was unable or unwilling to discuss her role in it.
Do you think she was unable or unwilling?
I think she was very unwilling.
All right. Okay.
So my first, you make hypothesis because you can't jump. It was, is she unable? Is she unwilling?
Yeah.
But the longer I worked with her, I could see she was just unwilling.
And why do you think she was unwilling?
Because I don't think she had developed the insight into the child protection concerns.
Yeah.
And whilst she had made change across several domains of child protection concerns, I don't believe that change would be sustained to today, because I don't think it was actual change that would be demonstrated over time, because her motivation and her willingness to do the work was because people were watching her. That was the outcome of my assessment in the end.
Yeah.
But we're jumping ahead.
Yeah. Well, no, I think it's good to say that. Like, I think it kind of was, I think it's good to come to let us know what your outcome was.
So how I kind of tested that, plus her understanding and her parental attunement and empathy, was I asked if we could do an activity and timeline her eldest child's life. And, she was super creative and very eager, because she's still very eager to please services and myself. So we spent 3 sessions doing this timeline of her eldest child's life, and the eldest child was 15. And the child protection concerns were prenatal for this young person. So 15 years plus the in utero experience, trauma, abuse and neglect throughout that person's lifespan. This family had moved across several different states over that period of time. So just observing the way in which this mother talked about her child and children experiencing episodes of extreme domestic violence, homelessness, her drug and alcohol use, experiencing her sex work, experiencing multiple changes in schools, and a huge absenteeism across all of her children, the ones that were enrolled in school. you know, and the reasons why she'd moved states, so many states. So she'd been through a couple of states. There was very little empathy or attunement to what it would have been like for her children. But we're looking at one child. So after asking some questions around that and observing, you know, a very minimal lack of attunement and no empathy. And I say that because it always came back to her. What was I doing? What was I trying to do? And then attributing blame or justifying the circumstances. There were no moments where it was like, oh my gosh, that must have been really hard for him or her, or I've never thought about what that may have felt like, you know, sleeping in a car for months and crossing 4 borders within 2 months. I never thought about missing friends or school. There were none of those conversations that occurred. It was always a blame or a justification.
Yeah. So blame her, what? It's like, so another person?
Blame another person, blame a service, or blame a system.
Right. Yep.
If I'd just been given housing in Western Australia, I wouldn't have had to leave.
Yep.
If South Australian Child Protection Services had just given me more money, it was those things.
Yeah.
It was never about what that felt like. Even, you know, the children, some were primary school for some of the events we were looking at, and just leaving friends or not maintaining friendships over a year. What did that feel like? We had a school report for one of the children, and it was so sad to read. And I took it because I'd been given it by the service. I took it to read in one of our sessions to see what she said about this school report and the amount of time this young girl had missed school, but the comments about, you know, it's a shame she didn't come to school more often, although when she did, she was isolated. She found it hard to engage with her peers. She was socially immature. She was unable to read and write despite being in year 3. Those comments, they're heartbreaking as a parent to read. No emotion. It reverted to but what I was facing at the time was.
Wow.
And I'm not dismissing those challenges, but when I'm looking at her parenting capacity, I'm starting to get some concerns.
So what ended up happening with your work with her?
The restoration progressed. So I shared my concerns with the service that had referred this mother and family to me. And, you know, it's a large sibling group, 4 children in different placements. And restoration was the goal. And I had a conversation with the caseworker and the manager at one stage, and I was trying to explain, I guess, the impact of the emotional needs of the children and the misalignment of this mother's attunement or empathy for her children.
Yeah.
And honestly, it was like I was speaking double Dutch.
Yeah. Are you sure you weren't?
Well, I could have been. And really, I did. I did sit and think, did I articulate myself really poorly then? Because it was, the manager's like, why are you telling us this? She has a house. She's a great cook. The house is always clean. You know, she's got a job. She's done all the courses.
Wow. I wonder what's happening now with that family.
Yeah, I have no idea, but the children were, you know, restored, and I really hope that it's going well. But I guess had I written a formal parenting capacity assessment, it would have been very different to the one that I read.
It would have been. Because you would have needed to include some scaffolding stuff, wouldn't you, in terms of skill development. And you would have needed to be really clear around the deficits in terms of that emotional relationship.
And those conversations were really hard to have with her because they were either shut down, or there was a distraction. There'd be some crisis that we needed to talk about, or no other worker has said this to me. Why are you telling me this? Yeah.
That's really sad, isn't it? Because, you know, at the end of the day, children actually need an emotional relationship with a parent. And so you just hope the parent has the capacity to do that reciprocated relationship back. I mean, that's kind of attachment in a nutshell, in a way. Yeah. Wow. Thank you, Rose, for sharing that story. It's kind of sad, though. It's bit of a bummer story, but I mean, I like the examples of the practice tools that you used and the skills that you put in place, because I think they can be replicated for different situations.
I love doing timelines with clients.
Same. Yeah.
Whether it's therapeutically, parenting capacity,
Yeah.
timelines are just, they give you so much information and give you so much to think about.
They're a really good decision-making tool as well. And I actually use timelines a lot for adolescents who might be, who kind of have a lot of suicide ideation. And I use a timeline to kind of explore, when did the thought start? What was the trigger? So you can identify the trigger, because sometimes, who knows what the trigger is. And then kind of the decision to not kill yourself, to not harm yourself. I kind of explore that period of time between the thought starting and the decision not to kill yourself. We explore that to death and kind of, well, that was a bit of a pun there, wasn't it? But we explore that to try and kind of to get the person to see that they actually have control and they actually have mastery over their own decisions, and that they make good decisions. It's just that they don't always think they're making good decisions at the time.
Yeah, wow, that's pretty powerful.
It's really powerful.
And I would think using a timeline like this, but with a different client, could also be that powerful.
For sure.
For the parent, because it was powerful for me as a practitioner.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, it's just that.
Great example, though, about how you use it with children, I guess, or young people who are experiencing suicidal thoughts or engaging in self-harm even.
Yeah. Look, the first time I did it, I'm not going to lie, I got halfway through and I thought to myself, God, this could go badly.
Don't you think that often about
Sorry about me. So, but I was kind of into it then, and I had to just keep going, and it actually worked out well. Now I've done it quite a number of times since, and I was like, thank God that went okay.
So it's practice. It is practice.
Definitely practice.
Yeah.
Any tool, any skill, anything we talk about can be adapted to any practice setting.
Yes.
And it's just about having fun with it and practicing it until you feel comfortable. And you'll put your own genuine style onto anything that we suggest.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, listen, I reckon we've gone on for long enough.
I would agree.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to us. Thanks for listening to our little podcast, Relational Practice of Social Work podcast. Please, as I said before, follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and hit follow on wherever you're listening so other people can find us. Tell your friends all about us. We would love for everyone to listen.
To our listeners in other countries.
Yes, that's exciting.
Hello, Vienna, South Africa, America, United Kingdom.
Rose said today to you listeners, they must listen to us and think, what a load of bogans they are. Anyway, we probably are. Anyway, thank you. Thank you for joining us.
So as we said earlier, the next few episodes, we're going to continue this theme. We'll talk about assessments, informal and formal, and then we'll also talk about foster care assessments and the differences, I guess, in foster care assessments versus parenting capacity.
Yeah.
But until then, stay safe and continue to practice relationally.